Robbie Davis from the League of Women Voters, and I would like to turn the microphone, literally or unliterally, over to the Monrovia Chamber of Commerce. They are our co-sponsors for this school board candidate forum. And so I would like to turn things over to Judy, who will introduce the chamber and do the flag salute. So Judy.
Great, thank you. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Monrovia School Board Candidate Forum. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Judy Scheffler with the Monrovia Chamber of Commerce, acting as the current president. And the Monrovia Chamber is pleased to co-host this event tonight with the Pasadena Area League of Women Voters. So let us begin the evening with our flag salute. So if you'd please join me by placing your right hand over your heart. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So I want to thank all the candidates for participating this evening. Our moderator is Robbie Davis with the League of Women Voters. Ms. Davis has been a member of the League of Women Voters since 1975, serving in Pasadena for the last 31 years. She has served as the president of the Pasadena Area League of Women Voters and has also served on the board of the League of Women Voters of California. She is a fourth-generation Californian, and she attended Mills College. So with that, I will hand that over to you, Robbie.
Thank you very much, Judy. So again, welcome everyone to the Monrovia School Board Candidate Forum, and we'd like to thank the Monrovia Chamber of Commerce and the candidates and you in the audience for your participation. As was said, I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of the Pasadena area, which includes Monrovia as one of the 13 San Gabriel Valley communities that we serve. The League's charter is to promote informed and involved participation in government through education and advocacy. So we do study and act on public policy issues, but we never endorse or support candidates or parties. And the kinds of things that I'm doing tonight, we do as part of our voter service program. So in the November 3rd election, there are 5 candidates competing for 3 seats on the Monrovia School Board, which is a term of 4 years. So before we begin, I would like to introduce the rest of the League team. In addition to myself, we have Betty Maureen, who will be serving as timekeeper. We also have Bonnie Skolnick and Debbie Fagan, who will be serving as question sorters. And I want to talk a little bit right now about the rules for this forum, which have been agreed to by the candidates. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to make an opening statement about themselves and their candidacy. And they're going to be speaking in order based on numbers that they drew prior to the forum. And the timekeeper is going to keep the candidates informed of the time remaining and will raise a red card when his or her time has elapsed. And once a candidate's time is up, he or she should conclude their statement as quickly as possible. And then once we're done with the opening statements, candidates will begin answering questions. And we've had quite a few questions submitted in advance. So those are the ones I'm going to start with. But you can enter your own question now in the Q&A space on your Zoom screen. And we do have some rules as far as questions go. They must be in the form of a question and not a statement. They may be directed at one candidate or all of them, but even if they're directed to just one candidate, the others may answer if they wish, and there's not going to be any rebuttals. If there are several questions on a similar issue, they may be grouped together, and questions must deal with the issues in this election. There will be no personal references or attacks that will be allowed. And all the questions asked or unasked are keep in the property of the League of Women Voters, and they're never distributed to the press or to third parties. And just to note that questions are sorted to combine duplicates, broaden any that are specifically directed to one candidate, or eliminate any that are an attack on a candidate. And if you enter a question and we ask it and you If you feel that it's been misinterpreted, please submit another one. And just, as I said, we had a lot of questions that came in, so due to time limitations, not every question may be asked. So each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each question, and that will be tracked by the timekeeper, and again, no rebuttals. And at approximately 8:15, the question period will be terminated and closing statements will begin, and each candidate will have 1 minute. And statements will be given in reverse order from the opening statements. And then remarks will conclude at that time. So if there are no questions, the first candidate to give their opening statement will be Tracy Golar. So Tracy, would you unmute yourself, please?
Okay, good evening. I'm Tracy Golar, and I'm running for the Monrovia School Board because now is the time to use my unique qualifications of knowledge, experience, and perspective to apply them to meeting the challenges of our current reality, as well as to help craft a vision for reimagining our schools so that we can meet the current needs as well as the needs of the future. I have served as an educator for over 30 years in suburban, urban, and rural school communities. For 20 years of service I had here in Monrovia Unified. In each school, I was able to establish a vision of high expectations, as well as cultivate school transformation using the core values of innovation, inclusiveness, collaboration, cultural responsiveness, and provisions for equity and access. As a school board member, I will have the opportunity to expand my sphere of service from a school site to affect change in an entire school system. I'm prepared to collaborate, set priorities, make policies, and establish practices to ensure learning for all students. I'm committed to gathering a variety of stakeholder input, create opportunities for discussion, allow time to reflect on what works, and identify what needs to be changed or improved. My goal as a school board member is to make a contribution to develop a clear vision, establish policies and practices that promote equity and access, and provide all students with educational opportunities that will create learning at the highest level of excellence.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Mr.
My website at www.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Mr. Hammond.
Hello. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and the Chamber of Commerce for sponsoring this forum tonight. And I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in and learning about each of the people running for the Board of Education. I've been very fortunate to have served our community in various civic roles throughout the years. Prior to being elected to the Board of Education, I served as a council member and the mayor of our community. I am proud of the work we have accomplished on the board. I have helped create and expand dual language immersion programs at Plymouth to teach Mandarin and Wild Rose to expand our successful Spanish immersion. I helped to create the Wild Rose School of Creative Arts for our students to strengthen their love for creative interests. I helped to create Santa Fe Computer Magnet School, where science and coding are a daily part of the curriculum. I helped start our early college program where our students attend college and receive college credit while still in high school. The results to the families are thousands of dollars in tuition savings as general education obligations are completed before leaving high school. I am proud we offer different career pathways like sports medicine, videography, and arts conservatory for our students. I am equally proud that 96% of Monrovia High School graduates pursue post-secondary education, and our admissions into four-year universities is at an all-time high. The credits for the results I'm proud of rest squarely on the shoulders of our students, families, teachers, administrators, and my fellow board members. No one person would be able to accomplish this on their own. However, the best ideas, the best plans, the best intentions falter if not doggedly pursued, and that is my strength. When I believe in a program or an idea, I will work tirelessly to achieve the outcome. This is the same determination the community saw when we were able to convince Los Angeles County to change their minds so our students would be able to have their graduation and promotion ceremonies.
Thank you. Okay.
Can I just finish?
Yeah, you just remember everybody to keep your eye on the stop thing. So
all the people here tonight are good people. We all have ideas and plans to help make our district the best it can be. I ask you to please look and support me and keep our positive momentum. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Ms. Anderson. If you could.
Good evening, and thank you for inviting me tonight. My name is Jennifer Anderson, and I'm the mother of 4 teenagers. For the past 15 years, our kids have gone through Mayflower, Santa Fe, and MHS. Throughout those years, I have dedicated my time to improving our schools by serving our PTAs, Massive Boosters, robotics, GATE, and our music programs. I have served on a multitude of district committees like Arts for All, Anti-Vaping, Discipline, GATE, LCAP, hiring committees for 2 different principals, and the recent task force to reopen our schools. Currently, as the president of Monrovia Council of PTAs, I'm responsible for the welfare of all PTAs in Monrovia and have strong relationships with parents, teachers, and administrators at every site. I collaborate regularly with district personnel from our beloved food services and custodial staff to our superintendent, cabinet, and school board. I have a master's degree in applied mathematics and have taught arithmetic to calculus at Cal Poly Pomona and PCC, where I was hired to teach math through computers, an early form of distance-based learning. I am passionate not only about all areas of education, but education for all. In my 15 years in Monrovia, I have advocated for equity in education, regardless of race, color, gender identity, ability, or socioeconomic background. I further believe that the social emotional health of our children and teachers is vital to learning and success in our classrooms. I am intimately involved with the day-to-day workings of our schools and continue to work with our school leaders to identify and repair holes in our distance learning platform. As the only candidate with children in Monrovia schools, combined with my current knowledge, I bring not only a parent perspective to the school board, but a deep personal investment to the success of our schools. This year will bring unprecedented challenges that we must overcome to ensure the future of our schools. It is critical that Monrovia's school board is not only acutely aware of the needs of our students, family, and staff, but that as a board member, we will fight for our education of every single child.
Thank you very much. Next speaker will be Mr. Wong.
Unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. I just want to thank the League for holding this forum. It's very important for people to understand who they're voting for and why. My name is Brian Wong, and as a 25-year Monrovia resident, I'm excited to be running for re-election as a school board member. In my 17 years on the board, my focus has always been to educate the whole child in academics, arts, athletics, while focusing on intellectual growth and respect for all. Monrovia provides a world-class education for world-class students. We are internationally known for our robotics programs, nationally known as Clifton is on the Schools to Watch list. We've been awarded 14 Golden Bell Awards from the state for excellence in innovation programs. The county has presented us with awards in nutrition, physical fitness, and career paths. All of these accomplishments, plus passing a $45 million high school modernization bond, has occurred during my tenure. But we have so much more to get done. Our academic standards and rigor have never been higher. 96% of our graduates are pursuing post-secondary educations. I believe that the arts are an integral part of a student's education. We've art programs in all of the elementary schools, in addition to creating the Wild Rose School of Creative Arts. In addition to having programs in the high school in the humanities, our athletics program is in a league of its own. Our past has been strong, but we need to prepare for the future with things like dual immersion. We currently have a historic opportunity to eliminate barriers that exist to impede diversity, equity, and inclusion. But we also need to deal with the very real educational challenges from COVID-19 virus and the financial devastation that it's brought. Hard decisions will need to be made. I see my time is up, so thank you.
Good. And finally, Mr. Zaroyan, would you unmute yourself, please?
Good evening. I want to thank the League of Women Voters and the Monrovia Chamber of Commerce. My name is Sashari Zaroyan, and I'm an education policy advocate on behalf of Monrovia students and families locally and statewide. I established the Healing Connections Committee in Monrovia that expanded mental health services and resources for my peers. I continue that advocacy in Sacramento, shaping education and mental health policy and legislation. At an unprecedented time for our students, we need a mental health expert who will enact policies to provide mental health services for all students, tackle Monrovia's increasing inequities such as high rates of chronic absenteeism for our most vulnerable, low math proficiency scores, and alarmingly low rates of college and career readiness. We need a graduate of Monrovia Public Schools that can empathize with the challenges our students and their families are going through, and someone with the expertise of advocating for additional mental health resources and funding to state lawmakers at a time when local control is restricted and our district has lost its ability to navigate Sacramento to put our students first. I work with families and students across California with the National Alliance on Mental Illness to teach them the skills they need to advocate to their local school board and city council. At the County Behavioral Health Directors Association, I push for legislation to provide additional mental health services and training for our students and staff, licensed mental health clinicians on school campuses, and increased funding for our vulnerable students who are experiencing homelessness, who are socioeconomically disadvantaged, who have a disability, who are part of the foster care system, and also English language learners. At a time when we as a district have historically neglected to engage our vulnerable students over the years, as the data has shown, when teachers and school employees are concerned about losing their jobs and need an advocate, we need a candidate with equitable experience, not just to lift up some students, but all students. I am that candidate. With creative and innovative solutions like automatic acceptance and life skills day, and the only candidate with a plan to address our inequities, we'll make Monrovia competitive amongst neighboring districts and also the best decision for Monrovia parents to keep their children enrolled in our schools. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Okay, we will start. The first question, I think we'll probably just jump right in with the big burning issue of the day, COVID-19. So the question is, what do you hope the school district will look like after COVID-19? And we will start with Mr. Hammond.
Thank you. We all can probably agree that distant learning is not the preferred way to educate our children. So starting with that premise, the post-COVID-19 will look like pre-COVID in the sense that kids will be back in the classroom. But I think it's going to take a long time before the community, in fact, probably the state and the world, goes back to the way it was with everybody commingling and so close. So there will be a lot of different changes that need to take place in our school district. And we'll learn those changes as we go through a hybrid process before we go back to full learning in the classroom.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson.
Hi. So COVID-19 is hopefully going to teach us something. And in the process of keeping our kids at home and teaching them through computers and distance-based means, I found that we've discovered new ways of approaching our education and new ways of approaching each other, new ways of interacting. I'm hopeful that when we get to the other side of COVID and eventually get our kids back into school, hopefully sooner rather than later, that we will be able to not only get back to where we were, but we'll be able to take what we've learned in this process of quarantine and lockdown and distance learning and use the tools to better the education that we previously offered, to find new ways of coming together and new ways of reaching and connecting our students and our community and our teachers and our parents and solidify us as a more cohesive group to educate all.
Thank you. Mr. Wong.
As I had mentioned in my opening statement, Monrovia has a long history of successes before COVID. Unfortunately, this virus is creating a lot of problems through distance learning. And every day that kids are out of the classroom, I fear they're falling farther behind. I fear the teachers are getting more burnt out. I feel the stress level on all parties involved, parents, teachers, and students, is going to get worse before it gets better. So having them come back into class is not going to be the end-all solution. We need to be working and looking forward on how we're going to bridge the problems that we've created by having this distance learning. This is going to take a lot of conversations between all the stakeholders that I just mentioned to figure out the best approach to get people back up to speed.
Thank you. Mr. Zaroyan.
Yeah, thank you so much. So there's no handbook for the current pandemic that we're in. You know, our district was struggling to engage families and students in their education prior to COVID-19, right? With our high rates of chronic absenteeism and low math proficiency scores, this pandemic not only made our weaknesses worse, however, Monrovia Unified entered distance-based learning underfunded from all the potential increased funding we could have received if we addressed chronic absenteeism for our most vulnerable student populations. You know, we need to be prepared to address the social and emotional mental health services post-COVID-19 for students who lost a loved one to COVID, who experienced COVID, or even due to this current recession that we're in for family members who lost employment. You know, I wish we could say we'll be stronger post-COVID-19. However, now we have more work to do because of the problems that we had yesterday that went unaddressed that impact today's reality and now planning for the future of tomorrow.
Thank you. And Ms. Golar.
Well, this challenge has allowed us to do something that we have never really quite encountered in education, and that is build it as we're doing it. So the other side of it is to take the learnings that have occurred during this challenging time and do better. So one of the things is now that we have met the challenge of making connections with students, between teachers, students, home, district, more connectivity with regards to devices, with regards to internet services. When we return to the classroom, we should continue that practice of some portion of distance learning, because all of your post-secondary institutions have pretty much gone to that type of learning model. So what do we look like on the other side? More connected, one-to-one devices available to our students, teachers better prepared to utilize technology as an instructional tool, and that's how we move the district forward.
Thank you. On a related question, somebody wants to know, what are your personal criteria for allowing students back in the classroom? And we'll start with Ms. Anderson.
Thank you. So my personal criteria is that we're going to follow the state of California and LACO guidelines to make sure that we're following government suggestions, but we also need to make sure that in our own district, we are paying attention to what's going on here. We need to make sure that we can safely educate our kids and not just open our doors because we're told it's okay. We need to make sure that our children are not going to endanger each other or their teachers or family members at home. We need to make sure that we find a way, and we're working on this, the hybrid, and ease into that and be able to have a fluid system so that if it seems like it's risky or it's not going as planned, that we can pull back and reevaluate so that by the time we do get there, we know everyone will be safe and remain healthy.
Thank you. Mr. Wong.
Well, we start with what the state, county, Department of Health rules are first. Then the next step is clearly before we open the classrooms, we need to have all staff, teachers, aides, parents, get together and determine their comfort level of coming back. At that point in time, we need to make sure that even though they can come back, they don't have to come back. This means a hybrid, not just in their coming to school half the time, but they have the option to continue distance learning if they're more comfortable with that. They have the ability to go halfway with a hybrid program if they want to see how things are going, or if they want to jump in full force and attend that's great too. But we have to have these conversations and allow them the options of what to do. We need to figure out how to get kids back into class as fast as possible, because pure distance learning is putting them at a big disadvantage.
Thank you. Mr. Zaroyan.
So currently, to hopefully put our students back into the classroom one day, we, like other candidates have said, we need to follow the guidance that's provided not just by the state of California, but the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health in their partnership with LACO, the Los Angeles County Office of Education, and putting out the guidelines for local school districts. After that, we need to be entering a robust stakeholder conversation, not just with our PTAs and school site councils, but also our teachers, as we have seen that students are more likely to be asymptomatic, and we put our teachers and school staff at risk. And also for parents who are essential workers during this, and for parents who are concerned about the of COVID and transmitting that to their families. We need to present not only hybrid learning models, as other candidates have said, but also building upon Mountain Park School, right? Mountain Park School is our independent learning program that we have. And it's a successful model that's worked not only for me, but for others.
Thank you. Ms. Golar.
Okay, so yes, of course, we need to follow the guidelines of the CDC, both state and then county LACO Office of Education. And then again, formulate a plan based on stakeholder input that we reach consensus on options. I think we don't need a one size fits all model. We need a hybrid model. We need options, and have a plan whereby there could be the expansion of the Mountain Park program, independent studies, or hybrid within the comprehensive settings, so that there are options, but after collaborative conversations with stakeholder input, staff, parents, and students involved in this conversation.
Thank you. And Mr. Hammond.
Thank you. As everybody said, we're going to follow the guidelines of the state and local health departments. The next issue is to always be guided by the principle of safety first, always. The next thing that we're going to look at is learning pods. We're taking the baby steps into the learning pod area very soon now to start testing. That will go into the hybrid model. That will eventually lead back into the classroom model. And on top of all of that, we need to listen and particularly pay attention to everything that is being told to us and said to us by the community that we serve. And lastly, we need to have and make sure that our staff is fully trained.
Thank you. Just one more COVID question. Someone wants to know if you anticipate a learning gap after COVID is over, after the distance learning, and if so, how would you address that problem? And we'll start with Mr. Wong.
Thank you. Sadly, I do. We've already seen how difficult it is for a lot of children to stay in front of a computer for a long period of time. My fear is that as we've started this distance learning, parents and kids, it's a new thing. They're really on top of it. And as time goes on, it's going to be more and more of a stress for them to keep up. I think that the stress on the teachers is getting equally as high as they're trying to make sure that all of their kids are staying on top of things. And the longer this goes on, the bigger the gap is going to be. The people who are most at risk before we started, that risk is just growing by leaps and bounds. I saw a study just yesterday that said the English language learners are only participating at about a 17% rate. This is horrible. Every day that goes by, that gap is only going to get bigger. So we are absolutely going to struggle.
Thank you. Mr. Zaroyan.
So absolutely. Our main priority for post-COVID is increasing our focus on student learning loss and equity. So this means doubling down on the students that are a part of our programs after school and during the summer to boost their math and reading proficiency skills. This also means creating long-term learning loss mitigation plans for vulnerable student populations, and also maintaining our use of technology to make educational services readily available. You know, we need to be implementing support programs that don't wait a whole school year to pass to actually identify students to place them into learning summer camp programs, but but we need to be identifying students early and get them the immediate resources they need once we're able to identify.
Thank you. Ms. Golar.
Yes, this is an unfortunate, brutal reality that the learning gaps that existed prior to COVID have been widened as a result of this distance learning platform. So what do? We need to look at each of the levels differently. In an elementary school setting, in terms of class sizes, you're talking 30, 34 students, whereas a high school teacher is dealing with 100, 150 students. So the load, the caseload, if you will, in terms of the management of meeting the needs of individual students to close those gaps and bring attention to where those gaps exist. So I think one of the initial plans of attack, consult with the teachers to talk about devising a plan so that they can execute and implement a plan to close that gap.
Thank you. Mr. Hammond.
Thank you. As others have stated, the problems that existed prior to March have only been exacerbated now. None of us foresaw starting our school year again in an online platform. Everybody assumed that we would go back to business as usual. And the problem with the business as usual, a lot of the stuff that we do is one size fits all. And that's not going to be a platform that's going to be successful in the future. We need to take care of the people who are the most vulnerable. And you can address that by going into specialized learning pods, especially for your special ed and English language learners. There is going to be a myriad of things that we're going to have to do differently as we try to rectify the issues that have been created from being in an online environment. And I think those that are most vulnerable are the very young children, K to 3, and it's critical that we address those needs and address them fast.
Thank you. And Ms. Anderson.
Thank you. As everyone agrees, we all believe there will be some probably major learning gaps. These are things we're going to have to start to address now. And I think teachers are already doing that. They see the gaps. I know that teachers are really invested in helping our kids get caught up. So we need to start the process now in meeting the kids where they are, identifying where the gaps are for each child, and then find solutions in collaboration with the teachers, with the parents, with the students, and then using our administration to help us clear the roadblocks to solve these problems so that we can take a step back and say, this is what needs to get done. How are we going to do that? And it's going to take all of us. It's not going to be an easy plan that we can spout out today. We're going to need to all dig in, take a good hard look at what needs to happen, and then work together to make sure that every child is addressed. Because if we don't do that, it's going to just ripple effect down the line. Thank you.
Thank you. Why don't we switch a little bit to finances? Because I know that finances are going to be a big issue post-COVID and maybe now as well. So one of the questions that we got says the Monrovia School District 3-year projected budget shows a $2.5 million loss. How would you propose to balance the budget? And we'll start with Mr. Zaroyan.
So first, we need to increase attendance. Our projected deficit would be far lower if we address the inequities that are present in our district. Second, former State Superintendent of California Schools, Delane Easton, has always said, a budget is a reflection of our values. Is Monrovia's values continuing to pay for lawsuits, litigations, and consultants, or is it funding our teachers and counselors for our students? That is the decision that Monrovians have to make with who they vote for in the school board election. I have the experience of working with our state budget and as well as school district budgets across California in establishing equitable fiscal means.
Thank you. Ms. Golar.
Okay, these times that we're experiencing are very similar back to 2008, when I was actually in the district at the time and at the negotiation table, where we had to look at such things as work furlough days in order to gain some means of leveraging the budget to meet the requirement of the 3% reserve. In that time, again, I agree that we have to look at sources of revenue. Attendance, attendance, attendance. That is what schools are funded based on. And so a real significant look at chronic absenteeism and the rates of attendance to improve that so that we can recoup some of the revenue that we are losing in our district to help balance our budget.
Mr. Hammond.
Thank you. I wish it was simply an answer that I could get to you and finish it in 1 minute for what it's going to be looking like. The reason why Monrovia has put so many different programs in place is to create value in attending our school district. And by the creation of the value, you hope to retain your students. Mr. Zoroyan is correct that attendance is an issue. But first, you have to give people the programming that they desire to come into the school district. The other is you have to prioritize everything that the community wants. And it's not as simple as cut this, reduce this, add this, subtract that. It's not. This is going to take a full lift from everybody in the community because we're going to have to address something that's going to affect the entire school system. And quite frankly, if anybody can answer this in 1 minute, I think you should elect them. Because those are the people that you need on the school board because it is not going to be answered in 1 minute.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson.
Thank you. I have to agree with Mr. Hammond and a lot of what he said. This is a very complex problem. And it's not, like he said, going to be solved easily. I believe that the students that show up in our classrooms are there for a reason. And it's not often because they want to increase our revenue. It's because they want to be there. We want to make sure that we increase those numbers, like Mr. Hammond said, with programs. And unless we do that, kids will go to different districts or they'll find alternative methods. We need to make sure that we're creative and we bring everybody to the table because we're going to need everybody's ideas to solve these critically hard problems. These are problems we've never had to deal with at this scale before. And so I would rather than coming up with a plan I can throw out in a minute, sit down with all of the key stakeholders and listen to their needs and find out what the direction of our community is, and then base a plan on that information. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Wong.
Yes, this unfortunately is a budget problem. It's probably going to get bigger before it gets smaller. And unfortunately, there is no easy answer. If it was, it really wouldn't be a problem. But budgets really are composed of two things, income and expenses. We've touched on some of the income levels. Fixing absenteeism is something clearly this district is well aware of and has many things in place to address. Adding students is a far better long-term solution to keep families in and bring families in. The one thing that we really have to do, and this takes some experience, is to go through every single program we have and evaluate it. This is a long, arduous process to evaluate programs on their cost and their benefit. This isn't just a school board issue. This is teachers, parents, and everybody else to determine what our priorities are.
Thank you. A lot of you have talked about attendance, and we have a lot of questions on enrollment. And so I guess one question we want to start off with enrollment is, what do you believe is causing decreased enrollment, and how could the board help to reverse this? And we'll start with Ms. Golar.
Thank you. Declining enrollment is a reality that is existing throughout all the districts in California. It's problematic. It is the need to pursue conversations to find out what programs will attract and retain the families that are in attendance areas of Monrovia. But decline in enrollment is an unfortunate situation that many families are moving to the Inland Empire or actually out of the state of California. So this is not specific to Monrovia. How do you address it? Again, the pursuit of programs with conversation that will support attraction and maintaining the numbers that you actually have now.
Thank you. Mr. Hammond.
Thank you. The cause is speculative. I speculate part of it's gentrification. I speculate that it could be smaller families. I speculate that the fact that people are waiting longer to start having families. I speculate that the fact that the average house in Monrovia is almost 700,000 doesn't forces out people who cannot afford that kind of property or the rent associated with it. There's a host of problems that you are looking at. Again, the part of the solution is making sure that the folks who are here see the value of attending our schools because we have programming that is desired. And that is something that we work on all the time, currently on the board, and we'll continue to do it in the future because that will be our lifeblood, our programming.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, enrollment.
Enrollment's tricky because there are a lot of reasons, and we don't necessarily know why all of the enrollment is down, but it is a universal problem. I have to echo programming. That's critical. If kids are not interested in being at your site, they're going to go someplace else, whether that they are required to because they've moved or because there are other alternatives. We need to really sit down with our community and our parents and find out what the parents and their kids want. If the parents are invested in a program that their kids love at the schools, they'll find a way to get their kids there. We need to really sit down and figure out the importance of all of these extra programs and make sure that we're offering something that's in alignment. We don't want kids to go to a different district that is offering something we don't. We need to figure out what those are and talk to our parents and find out what the kids need and what our parents want.
Thank you. Mr. Wong.
The district has done studies on this over the many years. Declining enrollment is not a new trend. What Mr. Hammond brought up is 100% on the nose. There's a lot of reasons why. The only time we can actually ascertain what happened is when we call every family up that was enrolled in the previous year that does not show up to find out where they went and what the issues were. All of the issues that have been talked about have been thrown around. There's no single trend that says that is the sole reason why attendance is going down. Programming is incredibly important. Which is why we've added all the various things you see, the computer magnet school, art school, robotics, humanities academy, pathways for people who want to go straight into the workforce instead of going on to college. But most importantly, what keeps families in Monrovia is success. The fact that we are, again, at our highest level of 4-year admittance to college is what helps bring people back in. It's success.
Thank you. And Mr. Zaroyan.
So like the other candidates have said, declining enrollment is an issue across California. We are one of the most we are the most expensive state in the country. And so for individuals in my generation who want to start a family and make that tough financial decision, and then they're looking to purchase a home or rent property, and they pull up apps that show the ratings of our school district and individual schools as 4, 2, or 6 out of 10, that makes a difference. I was talking to a parent last week who drives their child all the way to San Marino Unified because they aced the various issues that our school district still hasn't, dealt with. And so it's making sure that we're addressing the root causes that our district is still going through, and making sure that we're highlighting our incredible programs like dual immersion, Code to the Future, as well as providing new programs like automatic acceptance, which provides all graduating seniors automatically acceptance into a partnering community college like West Sacramento Unified has done.
Thank you. Just one more kind of tangentially related question, I guess has to do with enrollment, is how should the board address future school closures? Do you think, and again, do you think current enrollment levels will continue? And we'll start with Mr. Hammond.
If I understand the question, you're asking if we should look at school closures?
I think if they're necessary, how would you, I think, evaluate the, which ones, and that's kind of the idea.
Well, first of all, I don't even think I would completely answer that question, because I would not be in favor of closing a school at all. The idea of keeping your neighborhood school is one that is ingrained in our community. I think it also is not good for the students that have to move around trying to figure out where would they go if they don't attend their neighborhood school. The idea of closing a school, I cannot imagine it without a huge amount of public input, and the downfall that we would have to do it would be incredible. I don't think we're anywhere near that kind of a situation. And so it'd be more like watching, Star Wars and thinking about the future. It's just not that.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, thoughts about school closures?
School closure would be devastating to our community. I agree with Mr. Hammond that is the last thing we'd ever want to consider. Part of the charm of Monrovia is the community basis. The coming together at the street fair on Friday night, or when there are fires threatening our town. We have a really, really strong sense of community. And if we close a site and shuffle that around, that's going to really demoralize that area of our town. And that would be really detrimental. I would work to find any other solution than to close a school. That just doesn't even sound like a remotely, a possibility I would even ever want to consider.
Thank you. Mr. Wong.
Actually, in 2008, we had to consider this. This was the first time we took a massive financial hit. And as I said before, we are the trustees of the community and the community funds. And it is incumbent upon us to look at all possibilities, regardless of how much we don't want to do them. And the end result is we did anything and everything to make that an absolute last result. Absolute last result. But that doesn't mean we didn't look at it. I don't think we're anywhere near that at this point in time. I don't think we're remotely close to that point at this time. So yes, I think it's our responsibility to acknowledge the possibility, but we're nowhere near it.
Thank you. Mr. Zaroyan.
So even the thought of closing a school campus is astounding, right? School campuses and school sites, data has shown, are historically the best place to be providing healthcare services and mental health services for students. It's used to triage emergency services, and it provides a sense of community for surrounding neighborhoods, right? We see sports happening in there on the weekends. It's a sense of students being able to hang out. I cannot imagine school closure happening without a robust community stakeholder conversation. And even still then, we'd have to analyze whether or not the financial risk we are currently in would even deem that. I don't see that ever happening without, a large bunch of Monrovia community residents taking a concern into that.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Golar.
Yes, agreed. Reflecting back on our time in 2008, and that was very, very difficult, not only for the families and the students, but also the staff who dedicate and commit service to those particular school sites. So it's a very hard conversation to have, but when you're dealing with challenging and difficult decisions, you have to have options. And so to say that it's never an option, I think would be disingenuous. To say that you have to leave your options open, but that is why you have to have rigorous conversation, robust conversations with the stakeholders to be transparent about what is in front of you. in terms of the challenges of the budget, and then get from them opinions, thoughts, ideas of how to remedy the shortfall in your budget. But it is an option. It is a last resort option.
Thank you. Let's go back to just a quick bit to finance. Somebody wants to know if you support vouchers for charter schools and private schools. And we'll start with Ms. Anderson.
No, I don't. I think it undermines our sense of community, and it undermines the benefit of our public schools. And public schools give our children and our families and our teachers a sense of how to work in the world. And so I'm a product of public and private schools myself, and I'm a firm believer that we need to make sure that public schools are funded and that we give our kids every opportunity, and our school districts every opportunity to offer the best education possible at our public schools. So I am not for vouchers.
Thank you. Mr. Wong?
Yes, I'm not in favor of vouchers either. I also am a product of private and public schools. And what makes a community is the community. It's keeping the kids at their local schools that was just talked about. It's being able to interact with your neighbors on a daily basis through sports and through other activities like theater and what have you. Private schools as a whole tend to divide. They don't bring people together. And in this particular day and age, I think it is even more important that we come together, not apart.
Thank you. Mr. Zaroyan.
So I do not support vouchers. And the number one reason, we can look at Milwaukee, Wisconsin, right? The Milwaukee Parental Choice Program, which was the first voucher program in the nation in an urbanized setting. What that did is it actually promoted segregation of students. We had school sites opening in 5 to 10 years and shutting down just to take the funding away from public schools and take that money. So it's looking at that data that's readily available for school vouchers and private schools for doing that. You know, I'm a very proud graduate of Monrovia Public Schools. And, you know, even though we have issues in our district, we can work on that to make it better for everybody. That does not mean that we can push students and families away to even consider private schools. We as a community need to continue these robust stakeholder conversations so we can work on these issues and prioritize the needs of our students instead of pushing them away towards other districts or private schools.
Thank you. Ms. Golar.
In total agreement, no to vouchers. It is a complete drain of not only resources, but talent, taken from the public school system and draining and siphoning it off into private or charter. However, I am interested in knowing if we can relax open enrollment amongst our 5 schools in the district in terms of the elementary schools because of the specialty areas that have been created. So with the dual immersion, with the dual immersion, and then also the arts program, school of choice within our district so that families can pursue the programs that they are attracted to and want to have their students engaged in. So no to vouchers, but open enrollment within our structure of neighborhood schools, but pursuing those programs that you would like your child to be involved in.
Thank you. And Mr. Hammond.
Thank you. As with everybody else, I am not in favor of vouchers. It is hard enough with the money that we get, the limited money that we get to do the job that we're supposed to do. There are regulatory problems with charter schools as well as they're non-unionized. So I agree that charter schools and the action of the voucher, it strips the community of being in the community because people go someplace else. We just got through talking about closing a school. In effect, by moving people out and offering them the ability and then taking the money to educate the people who are left behind is a double whammy. And I am not in favor of that. Also, many charter schools have closed because they are not as successful as they appear to be on paper. And the fact of the matter is, public school education is the great equalizer here in the United States. And it allows everybody access to a quality education so they can reach whatever goal they as persons want to reach.
Thank you. And we have one more kind of financial question. This person asked, in this time of virtual classrooms, what will happen to the use of textbooks and what effect might this have on the district's budget? And we'll start with Mr. Wong.
Thank you. So textbooks are an ongoing conversation that we have. We currently are required to provide one textbook to each student. Not all textbooks are electronic. So as we continue to grow our technology and we continue to use it more and more, I am hoping that the rules on textbooks are going to change. But that also means that we need to learn how to teach differently as well. So there are a lot of assets or a lot of considerations to put into place. But at this point in time, again, a textbook is something that's solid. They can bring with them. They don't. It's something that they can use on a regular basis. But I do think eventually it's all going to migrate to electronic. It's just a question of when.
Mr. Zaroyan.
So I do have to agree with, the other candidate, Mr. Wong, about this, is that, textbooks in the future are going to go out, right? We're going to be looking at electronic textbooks and electronic materials. And right now as a school district, this gives us an opportunity to start incorporating technology and online electronic materials for our students, as well as for to accompany our textbooks, right? And to also update our literature reading list to make it not only engaging for students in the age of social media where they're distracted by other mediums, but also make it available for parents to sign off on. So this is an opportunity to continue that robust conversation of updating our textbooks, incorporating electronic reading devices and online materials, as well as updating our literature reading list.
Thank you. Ms. Golar.
All of the above, yes. Most of the publishers have gone to the online textbook availability prior to COVID. That was just the movement forward in terms of providing textbooks at a lesser cost. In 2008, there were waivers. In fact, they disregarded California, the whole adoption process and policies because of the economic devastation in the state of California. I'm believing that probably in a similar action, we will have waivers that we can apply for in terms of not having to adopt textbooks. And if they are being provided online and through the use of technology, we will be sufficient in providing to our students the textbooks that are necessary for instruction.
Thank you. Mr. Hammond.
Thank you. In many cases in Monrovia, we've already moved away from the hardbound book and gone electronic. We are on target to go one-to-one devices for each one of our students in every one of our schools. The notion of not having a textbook, because people learn differently. Now, I am not a teacher, and I don't play one on TV, but I have been around a lot of teachers, and I know for the fact, and we've said it again tonight, that learning and education is not a one-size-fits-all prospect. So in some cases, the student will learn better having a physical book in their hand rather than having the device in their hand. And we need to be able to make sure that we're accommodating the need of the individual student. That is the beauty of public education. It's a fair and appropriate education for everyone. One good thing about going electronically, it's good for the environment. And if you don't have to cut down some trees to make a bunch of books that are going to go get used and that have to be recreated in a year, that's a good thing.
Thank you. And Ms. Anderson.
This was actually a part of a conversation I had with our superintendent just in the last week or so. I have 3 kids at MHS, and we have a lot of books. I actually have a number of textbooks that are never opened, not because my kids don't study, but because the teachers don't assign things out of the books. I have consumables from 2 math classes that have never been touched, 2 sets each, because I have twins that are in 10th grade. This is an ongoing issue where I think we need to be really clear about our communication with what's being utilized in our classroom and what we continue to need. It's also another aspect of where COVID can have a silver lining. This is an area where we can look and say, now we have an opportunity to look at textbooks differently. Maybe we don't need textbooks. Maybe we need, now maybe we do. I'm not saying one size fits all at all, but there may be some classes that there are modules or there's online curriculum that they can be using instead of a standard textbook. So I think we need to be open to lots of options.
Thank you. Let's switch gears a little bit. Mr. Zaroyan, you've talked a lot about mental health, and so there's a question that's come up, and I think everybody can chime in on this, as to what mental health services are currently in place in the district and what changes do you see that are necessary? So we'll start with you, Mr. Zaroyan.
So I'm so glad, that the Healing Connections Committee is still working in our schools at Monrovia Unified and providing those mental health resources and services, as well as the additional partnerships Monrovia Unified currently has with Pacific Clinics and the Family Services, and making sure that we're providing, clinicians for low-income students. However, it's looking at how we can be innovative in providing additional mental health services. So that means adopting models like Fresno County and Monterey County and partnering with our Department of Mental Health in LA County to provide mental health services for all students, regardless of income eligibility. It means in our elementary and middle schools, introducing adverse childhood experience screenings so we can identify students who have a behavioral health condition and get them the resources they need so that they aren't showing high rates of truancy, high rates of academic disachievement in the future. We need to be innovative and adopt best practices that are seen across California.
Thank you. Ms. Golar.
Having worked in several school districts, there are different models. The mental health and wellness of students can be best supported by such things as Monrovia has done, the establishment of the Wellness Center there at Monrovia High School, bringing in interns from the local colleges who are pursuing certification in mental health practices. But in addition, possibly adding to our staff such positions as psychiatric social workers, where they are positioned to support the school site counselor who is inundated and has a very large caseload at each of the elementary or the middle schools. So to provide some augmentation, some support, so that we can do a better job to meet the needs of the mental, social, emotional wellness of the students in our district.
Thank you. Mr. Hammond.
Thank you. I believe in giving credit where credit is due, and this is a question that's probably handmade for Mr. Zaroyan. We started our wellness center because of an idea that he had. We have done, I think, a great job in not only where it started, but where it continues to grow to. We have a fantastic staff that runs it. We have MOUs with our community partners to help us in that. We have reached out and we have interns that help out with our services. We've actually won a Golden Bell because of how good it is as an example to other districts. The one thing I think that, and it's another thing that's near and dear to my heart, my wife is a marriage and family therapist. Well, I don't know who her clients are. I certainly see and I certainly hear some of the need in our conversations, never about the person, always about a thing. And I think the environment we are right now only lends itself that we need to get better at it because there's more people who will need it.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson.
I'm very pleased with our wellness center at the high school. I think we have excellent staff and resources. We also have Dr. Rial at our district who oversees and is consistently working on adding to that program, which I think is critical. in this time when kids are more set aside from their peers, they're frightened, they are anxious, they are sad and scared, families are at risk. It's more important than ever that we include this. I think our school needs to build on what we already have, and we need to be creative about how we handle this. It could be just a matter, not just a matter, but simple things like maybe having online clubs to help kids connect in the interim until we can offer more robust services, or until kids are on campus, or finding ways to help kids connect and support each other in the meantime until we can get back to schools, or until we can put bigger programs into place. But I think this is the direction we definitely need to head and provide our children.
Thank you. Mr. Wong.
I think the original question is what do we currently provide? And just to answer that one really quick, we have, I think it's 9 counselors. We have a pathway program. We have the Wellness Center, Care Solis we have partnered with, the DeVille Family Services we've partnered with. We have various county programs as well. And none of it is enough. I mean, I agree with Mr. Hammond in that, you know, Sasha did a great job in bringing this to the forefront back when he was in school. And I would like to think we've only built on what he started. Earlier this month, I was able to participate in a suicide awareness program, because this is Suicide Awareness Month. And that is the first time that I can remember that we've had such a community outpouring. I mean, we live in some very perilous days, and we need to provide as much support as possible.
Thank you. Talking about, there's a whole bunch of questions about different special programs. One of them is that says special education is a hot button issue with regards to remote learning. How do you plan on budgeting for direct support that is appropriate for the needs of the special education students and their families? And we will start with Ms. Golar.
Well, it is really taking a look at the brutal reality that the students with disabilities are our most vulnerable students. In terms of math, they are 108 percentage points below grade level. In English language arts, 76% points below standards. So the students with disabilities are a student population that is really struggling in terms of finding a path of success in the district. And so there has to be a deliberate, intentional conversation focused on how to meet their needs better. So that's what I would say.
Mr. Hammond.
If you could do me one favor, could you repeat that question, please?
Yeah, it says special education is a hot button issue with regards to remote learning. How do you plan on budgeting for direct support appropriate to the needs of the special education student and their family?
Yes. In 1978, the federal government mandated that we teach special ed. It started with a 40% guarantee from the federal government to the school districts that the feds would fund up to 40% of your special education. In Monrovia, they give us about 12% of the money that we need. Right now, our general fund subsidizes special ed to the tune of about $7 million a year. So we are thoroughly and fully committed to making sure that we are funding as best as we can the special ed. We do specialized cohorts. We do, we're looking forward to SPED starting in person very soon, because we recognize that these young people are the most vulnerable in our population, and virtual learning is not an environment that's best suited for them.
Ms. Anderson.
Well, I know our special education team has been working all summer long. I've worked somewhat alongside them, and they're working to find really creative ways to make sure that they can reach their students because they miss them. I think in terms of funding, that's going to be a hard question. Funding is going to be a big resource. I mean, we're going to have financial drains on all aspects of our budget. And this one is really important that we get right. I think it's important that we sit down and find out from our families what is most critical and what we're lacking, so that we can go in and make sure that we prioritize what they truly need and reevaluate our what we can offer. Because if we are limited in any way, we want to make sure that we target what is most important and most meaningful to those families.
Thank you. Mr. Wong.
Well, Mr. Hammond helped take care of the finance problems. All of the numbers he gave are obviously correct. And to put that into perspective, $7 million, we have revenues annually of about $50 million. So that is one program. That's in addition to what we're already spending. The special education area is incredibly vulnerable to this distance learning. Many of these students require one-on-one aids. They require much different type of teaching that is not conducive to staring at a Zoom meeting. I think that we need to really get the input from not only the teachers, but from the aides who are really working with them even more, because everybody is spread so thin on how to provide them the services that they need. I'm hoping this is going to be one of the silver linings from the COVID is we may learn something that we did not know previously worked.
Thank you. And Mr. Zaroyan.
So special education has historically been underfunded, right? The federal government expected to be providing more funding for special education. And we saw with the local control funding formula, the state was supposed to be allocating additional funds and is allocating additional funds towards these high needs or vulnerable student populations. One of the biggest concerns across the state, and also as seen by, in our school district, is making sure that those LCFF funds are going to these high need students. Now, this doesn't mean that our special education students will suddenly be funded, but it just means that they're going to be provided that additional boost in the amount of resources and services that we can be providing them. So this requires having a robust conversation with our special education parents, our teachers, and our special education aides who are working full time right now and going above and beyond in providing services and resources they need in an environment that's challenging for special education parents and students.
Thank you. Here's another kind of special program thing. The questioner wants to know, what is your view of the newly passed ethnic studies high school graduation requirement? And we'll start with Mr. Hammond.
Well, I, and along with the whole entire board, I'm sorry, we supported AB 331. I was looking for a word and it escaped me, excuse me. And I absolutely believe that having cultural studies is very important. I don't think it's just one class though. This is something that needs to be a thread throughout the entire educational system. When we know where we came from, we'll know where we're going.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, Ms. Anderson.
I am a huge supporter of AB 331, and my biggest regret about that is that it seems to be continually pushed back. I think it's way overdue. It should have been instituted a long time ago. And as Mr. Hammond was saying, it needs to be not just but institutionally, right? It needs to not just be, oh, in 9th grade, our kids are going to learn about, from this textbook, whatever they decide to call it. This needs to be systemic, starting with Canyon Early Learning and all the way through our high school. This isn't something that we just want to focus in one semester or 1 year. This needs to be an entire shift of how we do business in our schools, so that we're not just teaching our kids, but we are modeling this. And this is the entire attitude isn't quite the right word, but climate that we need in our schools and our school district.
Thank you. Mr. Wong.
Yes, it was a fantastic board meeting when we had the ability to discuss all of the benefits of this program. And of course, the board wholeheartedly, unanimously supported this. There is no question, there is no doubt that students are more engaged when they get to see people that look like them, excuse me, and sound like them. So this is part of a bigger picture in making everybody more comfortable, to be excited about being there, not feeling excluded that they don't see people like them or hear about from people like them. This is a fantastic thing, and this is just a small stepping stone to break down those biases that we're not even aware of. Thank you.
Mr. Zaroyan.
So Assemblymember Jose Medina did such a fantastic and wonderful job passing AB 331 to require ethnic studies curriculum in our schools. However, this is an opportunity for us to expand the types of ethnic studies curriculums that we can provide to students who want to engage in a certain part of history. And also having a robust conversation with our diverse communities in Monrovia, who during this time of racial unrest and concerns and feels like, you know, the staff and the faculty are not representative of the diverse communities, this is an opportunity to engage those staff and the students in this conversation. Ethnic studies is more important now than ever, not just to look at the wrongs of history, but really educate for future generations on what we can do to provide a model.
Thank you. And Ms. Golar.
Thank you. Yes, going back to 1993, actually, I was fortunate to teach a course called Minority Literature, where we engaged in ethnic studies through the use of literature. I am in total agreement that this is a right time and opportunity to infuse ethnic studies types of learning at all grade levels. So it needs to permeate from early education, childhood education, all the way through the high school. And it is something that can be incorporated into diverse disciplines. It doesn't strictly have to be an area of social science and history. It should live and breathe in literature, reading, science, to be exposed to the diversity of America and the richness of what has been the contributions of a multitude of cultures and people. So in a total agreement, and it's wonderful that it's intentional and deliberate, not just accidental, but intentional.
Thank you. Before we get off of the special programs area, I have to ask a question that's dear to the heart of the League of Women Voters, and that is there any plan to have civics education taught at all levels, from elementary through high school? And what can the board, what kind of guidance can the board provide to get this going? And we'll start with Ms. Anderson.
Not being on the board, I don't know if they have any plans for that or not. I remember taking civics in 9th grade. We currently offer econ and government, but I think civics is a really good opportunity for our kids. There isn't a whole lot for our 9th graders currently. They can take AP Human Geography, but if they don't want to do that, they don't really take a social studies class that year. And I think that would be a great place to slot that in. There's a lot to be learned, and maybe that's a good way to start even before AB 331 is enacted in our state, but maybe start there and put a civics class in place and start with a lot of the ethnic studies portion. But I would be very much in favor of that.
Thank you. Mr. Wong?
Well, as you can imagine, I think everybody on this panel is in favor of having a more robust civics criteria. I mean, I don't think it takes too much more than to look at our world events, not even our world events, but the events that are going on here in the US to say how much it is needed to have our younger students understand the importance in their role and how things work and how things go. And I don't know that you can start that too young. And this is just a part of a bigger scene in which things are slowly starting to change. I think we have some historic opportunities to change the direction from how things have been done historically to how we want things to be done in the future.
Thank you. Mr. Zaroyan.
So this is a great way of diversifying our curriculum for our students. You know, right now where students have the accessibility to be looking into cited articles and studies on their own and really engaging in the types of history that they want to be learning, that can inspire them for future, you know, careers and passion. We as a school district should be getting ahead of that, not only with our ethnic studies that we should be providing, but also with civics, right? And including that not just in our high school levels, but really early on, so that we can engage students to be more involved in their community and in our districts, and as well as other opportunities. I believe civics is a great opportunity for that, for students who don't have the opportunity to, you know, be a part of AP Gov or, you know, other hard curriculum courses. We should look at other courses that can engage them at a very early level so that they can continue their advocacy. And I think this is a great opportunity.
Ms. Golar.
I think one of the significant goals of education, as Dr. Martin Luther King would say, is character and intellect is the true goal of education. And so a study of civics, incorporating civics, it's a yes. You would want to do so. How do you go about doing that? Do you create an entire curriculum or a new path? But to continue to find ways to have real world application, maybe more project-based learning circle through how students at every grade level can be positive, productive members of our society. So it is of value, it is of need, and yes, I would be in full support of such.
Thank you. And Mr. Hammond.
Absolutely in favor. It's our obligation to teach the next generation what it is that we do. I mean, I love the fact that, and I'm sorry, I was going to call him, it's Sasha. I've known Sasha for, what were you, a junior in high school? And look at him today. It speaks volumes of making sure that we offer the opportunity to the younger generation to be involved. I'm proud of the fact that we have student representatives that attend our meetings. They are in fact sworn in. We swore in our student representative last night at the board meeting. We participate in youth in government in Sacramento, where the students take over Sacramento and become the governor, the lieutenant governors, and they act as lobbyists. And it's phenomenal, so that the generations coming up will understand and know how it is that we perform. And we support that. In fact, I was lucky enough to be in Sacramento this year for Youth in Government one more time. And everything that we can do, it's not just, it's not just the teachers that need to teach, it's us as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's switch over. There have been a lot of questions submitted about sort of board operations in general. One question is, will your outside commitments allow you to give enough time and attention to the school district during these unprecedented times? And we'll start with Mr. Wong.
Well, since this is my 17th year, I'm going to say yes. I've been able to plan around this because it is maybe the most important thing out there in my mind. I think it's important to give back to your community. This is my way to give back to my community. And so I build things around this the best I can. It is incredibly time consuming at this point in time. We're having board meetings and special board meetings on a weekly basis in the attempt to keep people as engaged with what's going on as possible, to keep them as informed as what's going on as possible, only to take that feedback to get ready for our next discussions. This has never been a more important time to be available literally 7 days a week, and that is no joke. And it is well worth the time. I love it. I love it.
Thank you. Mr. Zaroyan.
Yes, so I'd like to acknowledge, all the incumbents and candidates are here because at this, at this unprecedented time, we are stepping up to the plate to represent and advocate for students and parents who may feel disenfranchised. And that means providing, our own times, personal times with, because we're spending with families or friends and community to really be dedicating on finding solutions, to be advocating for all students and parents, especially right now where we are in a recession that's been induced by a pandemic. And so it's not only about, making time available just for board meetings, but also making time available to engage in deeper discussions, to provide these innovative and creative solutions that us candidates are introducing. Because of the fact that, understanding the climate of Monrovia and California, it's important. And as a school district, we need to continue to get ahead of that. And I'm very proud of just all the candidates here today.
Thank you. Ms. Golar.
Yes, the timing for me is such that I have recently retired as a principal of a school site. And this allows me to not retire what I believe is my calling, and that is to be a champion of children and education for children. So I don't have the commitments that I would have had 6 months ago, 3 months ago. So I have the time, I have the energy, and I still have the passion and drive to work in the schools, particularly in the schools of Monrovia, and work on an entire school system instead of focusing on a particular school site. So the availability of time, energy, and willingness to do whatever it takes to have our schools become great.
Thank you. Mr. Hammond.
Thank you. I am self-employed, and thus my employer gives me a lot of flexibility in what I do. And the fact is, this is the greatest full-time, part-time job you'll ever have. You're able to help your community. And I take no greater pleasure in being able to take a phone call, an email, or a text message for somebody that has an issue, no matter what time it is, and find and help out with a solution. It's the reason why I do the job. It is taxing at times. It's exhilarating at times. It's frustrating. But most importantly, I think it's fulfilling.
Thank you. And Ms. Anderson.
So when I had children, I stopped teaching, and I've been a full-time mom for the last 20 years. Since my oldest son started in kindergarten, I've dedicated my time to making our schools better. It never occurred to me to run for school board until recently. And it is truly a calling for me. I feel like with my background in education and my deep involvement in our community right now and our schools, I know what's going on a daily basis at many of the schools, along with my relationship with the different sites and all the people that are involved in those sites, that there is nothing more important to me. And with all the other volunteer activities that I have, and there are many of them, they will have to be put by the wayside. And this will be my one focus, because there is nothing more important right now than our kids' education, aside from their safety. So absolutely, I'm all in.
Thank you. Somebody wants to know, what kinds of skills and experience do you have to make decisions about ratifying contracts and hiring personnel? And we'll start with Mr. Zoroyan.
Yeah, so my unique experience of not only having a master's and focusing my master's work on education policy provides me that educational background, right? But also my experience in working in Sacramento and rural, suburban, and urban counties on working on grants and budgets and contracts, analyzing funding streams of those school districts and shaping legislation and policies, and working with teachers to really provide those mental health services and trainings. So I provide that unique experience of not only being ready to dive in and understanding the various funding streams of a school district, but also understanding the funding streams of the state and how that would impact a local school district like Monrovia, and how to maneuver around that and provide the best services with the constraints that we may have for the future.
Thank you. Ms. Golar.
Can you please repeat the question?
The question is, what kinds of skills and experience do you have to make decisions about ratifying contracts and hiring personnel?
Okay. During my time as a teacher in Monrovia, I actually served on the MTA negotiation team. When I became an administrator, I switched sides of the table and served as an administrator. So in terms of ratification of contracts and contract language and all of that, my experience comes from my time in Monrovia. Also, as a site principal, you are involved in integral part of hiring and publicizing positions, trying to retain the talent that you have on your site. So that is one of the job responsibilities as a site administrator. So that is my experience in terms of having contract information, negotiations, as well as hiring of staff.
Thank you. Mr. Hammond.
Thank you. I have been self-employed for over 30 years. I have dealt with literally hundreds of different contracts for many different levels of service. I served as the council member and the mayor of this community for 13 years. I have 9 years worth of experience being on the school board and all the different contracts that come up from that. We don't do hiring on the school side. We have one employee, and that is our superintendent. So the notion of hiring people does not really come to our purview. Although in my real world of living and working, I have hired literally hundreds of people. You need to be able to do, it's what you do as part of the job. And nobody here knows how to be a board member until you're a board member for about 2 years. It's a steep learning curve. Any kind of government service at the level that we're in right now is a very steep learning curve, and it's on the job training.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson.
I have to agree with Rob. We're never going to have the kind of experience that you or Brian do without actually having served on the school board. My experience with contracts comes from my background with PTA. All of our PTAs enter into contracts, and there are very specific ways that they have to do that. One of my roles as the president of the Monrovia Council of PTAs is to ensure that all of our PTAs are compliant, and that includes things like insurance and contracts. And so that's something that I've dealt with for the last 15 years. In terms of hiring, I've been privileged to be on several hiring committees, and even though as Rob said, we have one employee, I have helped hire 2 different principals and several staff members in our district, and feel that I have a lot of experience in interviewing people, and that I can offer that as a school board member as well.
And Mr. Wong.
Like Mr. Hammond, I've been self-employed for most of my life as well. And the one thing you learn very quickly is how to evaluate people. Not that we do any hiring, but it is important when people are run by us to be able to ask questions and make sure that they are meeting the things that you want to do and see. My professional career has been in finance, and honestly, I think I've used that almost every day that I've been on the board in some manner or another. There is nothing we do that is not tied to finance in some manner. And it has never been more important today with the challenges we have in front of us than to be able to understand how school finances work, because it is not a business. Schools are not a business. We are not in the business to make money. We are in the business of serving children. So the way we approach our books and finances is not how a normal business would do it. And that's the right way.
Thank you. Somebody had mentioned the MTA, and so one of the questions that has come up is, it says, this is the 5th year MTA is attempting to finalize our contract. How can you help facilitate a contract agreement in a timely manner? And basically, what is your opinion of unions as they relate to schools? And we'll start with Ms. Golar.
Thank you. So as I said, I had the fortune of serving on both sides of the negotiation table. So working with the union, I was actually representing the union in the interest of the union as the MTA negotiation team. And then on the side of the district, again, entering into, at the time, we utilized interest-based negotiations, which was very powerful in times of prosperity and in times of difficult budgetary concerns. So how do you go about getting to resolution and agreement on a contract? Really, I really highly value interest-based negotiations, because you bring out the interests and then you dive into what are the shared interests, and you build from the positive instead of positioning yourself against, so that there's a them against us kind of mentality. So you can do that with a lot of transparent communication and conversation.
Thank you. Mr. Hammond.
Thank you. I'm going to approach this two ways. The first is, I believe in a very stable, secure workforce. I think it builds a great morale. I think not having a stable and secure environment in which you work creates bad morale. Therefore, I'm in favor of unions. Particularly, I want people to be able to be secure, knowing that when they were hired, there's going to be a job for them if they were able to do the job that they were hired for. The second part of that question is, what would I do to help facilitate? I don't like the way we negotiate. I think the way we negotiate, we're constantly in the rears. I would like to see us have a multi-year contract, so that once the contracts were completed for that negotiation, you would have a respite for a period of time, and we wouldn't be constantly negotiating our employment contract. Thank you.
Ms. Anderson.
Unions are important, as they provide our staff a lot of security, and that's part of the balance between the administration, the staff, and the parents. And collectively, we all work together to offer a better educational system for our students. So I think they're a really important part. Now, we all have to find common ground. And one of the ways we do this is through communication. And I agree with Tracy when she said, we need to figure out what our similarities are. I think more often than not, we get caught up in where our differences lie. And instead of, let's sit down and figure out. I was at a negotiation a few years ago, and I said, this is what we want. And I was told, well, they don't like this. And I said, what do they want? And nobody knew. And I said, okay, let's find out what they want. And you know what? Collectively, we found a better arrangement for both of our groups after that conversation than we had before, which neither one had brought to the table. But the bottom line is, we communicated and found a better option.
Thank you. Mr. Wong.
Yes, well, Tracy, you'll be happy to know we still do interest-based bargaining. And I agree with you, it is a phenomenal way to do things. That way, we don't butt heads. We're trying to find a common solution. We will put a problem out, and then jointly we try to come to a solution. It's important for people to know and understand that the board themselves do not participate in negotiations. The board has a representative that speaks on their behalf, and they are on part of a negotiation team like Tracy was on. Our negotiations are a little bit different because they're interest-based. They're ongoing. It's a rolling schedule in which we talk about things on a regular basis. We don't have to wait a year or 2 years or 3 years to bring up a topic. If there's something that is pressing on either side, we have the ability to bring it up at any point in time and go from there. Just as a quick example, I mean, we just signed MOUs in our last meeting because it was something very new.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Zaroyan.
So I'm very proud to say that I come from a family of educators, right? So I understand the power of unions when it comes to not only providing teachers and staff who work for Monrovia Unified and their family stability, but the importance of unions. You know, the Public Policy Institute of California released a study analyzing the local control funding formula for our school districts and seeing if it boosted the academic achievements for students. Now, although it said two things, one is that it was a little too soon to tell, but the second is they noticed the best academic achievement with teachers who had tenures and experience in classrooms. And we as Monrovia Unified need to be solidified in that by providing salaries that are competitive with neighboring districts, not only in LA County, but for the living equalities wages in the state of California. So we need to prioritize our teachers' pay and our unions, because when they thrive, students thrive.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. If you are elected, what do you expect will be your 2 greatest challenges in the coming year as a board member? And we'll start with Mr. Hammond.
Oh, thank you for giving me the easy one. The 2 biggest challenges are going to be number 1, funding, and number 2 is keeping the programming that we know works. It's going to be very difficult to have one without the other. As the funding is going to decrease, everything that I have read, every study that I have seen is showing that starting in January, there's going to be a huge different economic picture than what we're facing right now. And the critical component, as we talked about when we first started this forum, is that we have some very good programming. That programming is the draw that keeps people in our district. And there's going to be a very delicate balance between doing what we have to do to keep our finances and our school in check financially and providing the services that we have promised and the community expects.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, your 2 greatest challenges.
Okay, so I agree that the financial aspect is going to be a very big challenge for all of us, and echo Rob's statement that it's very important that we keep the programming for our students, and that will help hopefully the finances in the long run. The other really significant hurdle I see is the learning gap. We're going to have monumental strides to make to get our kids caught back up. And we really need to start that and the financial piece right now. We need to be looking forward and solving them. The financial piece we have experts for. The learning gap, we're having to figure out as we go along in a way that we never have before. So I would like to focus our efforts not only on how we are able to maintain as many programs as possible and shore up what we have, but also to make sure that our students are still able to read and write at the level that we expected them in past years. So those are the 2 hurdles I see.
Thank you. Mr. Wong.
There's no question the financial chasm that we're coming up on is by far the largest issue. It's bad now, as Mr. Hammond pointed out, high probability it's going to get worse, and all of the associated things that go with that. Of keeping the programs that have been so successful for us. The second portion that really concerns me is the distance learning, the COVID-related issues in coming back, and the problems that we're going to have to get students up to speed, having teachers not burn out in the meantime, and having parents stay behind us as we're trying to learn how to get through this. And the only way to deal with both of those issues is to start now. We cannot wait until we get back to school before we start trying to figure out how to overcome the problems we're having with the distance learning. We cannot wait until the next shoe drops from California before we address our financial budget problems.
Thank you. Mr. Zaroyan.
So this is a very important question, and the worst part about this question is only being able to pick 2. But one of my biggest concerns is what COVID-19 has exacerbated for our school district and the educational inequities that we're seeing, especially for vulnerable student populations who are deeply suffering during distance-based learning, like, individuals who are socioeconomically disadvantaged, who are experiencing homelessness, who are part of the foster care system, and as well as students who have a disability. Last night, the board meeting noted that we only had 400 parents take a survey analyzing distance-based learning out of more than 5,000 enrolled students in Monrovia schools. That's astonishing. And that shows that we have more work to do in this time. So it's not only prioritizing their mental health and their social emotional needs with engaging them at a time where we're at a civil unrest of our pandemic and, racial inequalities, but also making sure that we're addressing the engagement of our families at this time.
Thank you. Ms. Golar.
Well, the top one would be the budget, the balanced budget, and trying to maintain and even grow some of your specialty programs so that you can gain more engagement of students at all grade levels and retain the students that are now in attendance at our schools. So balancing the budget and making sure that we are solvent, that is critical, and we must do that. Secondly, again, agreeing with Sasha with regards to the educational inequities and looking at those hard to have conversations about why is it seemingly our school system working for maybe 24% of the student population as opposed to 70% of our students socioeconomically disadvantaged, students with disabilities, students of color. Why is it that they have such gaps that has seemed to have been widened as a result of COVID? So those are the two critical top priorities: balanced budget, educational inequities.
Thank you. And this is sort of related. I see this as kind of the other side of the coin. There's your priority, there are the challenges that you're going to have in the coming year, should you be elected. But what are the issues aside from that you are most passionate about? Maybe one or two. And we'll start with Ms. Anderson.
I'm personally most passionate about anything that encourages our children. I hope that our kids find in schools that which they love and they want to do more of in life. So that would be something I would be interested to hear from our community. I know we have some really robust and wonderful programs. I think we have a wonderful music program. We have our Math and Science Academy, and we have robotics, and we've got our Code to the Future and dual immersion. These are all, there are several more, but these are all really critical programs that interest a wide variety of students. It doesn't matter what is interesting to me, it matters what draws and connects with our kids. So we need to figure out what programs what they enjoy and what we're lacking and build on those, because without that information, it's just a bunch of us saying, well, this is my favorite topic. We need to find out what our community really needs.
Thank you. Mr. Wong, your passion.
Thank you for bringing a positive question to this doom and gloom area. My passion is early college. I mean, this is just the most phenomenal program. Our goal as educators is to prepare students for their next level. A good number of our students want to go on to college, but the reality is, especially in today's day and age, it is incredibly expensive. It is incredibly competitive. It is harder and harder to get into college. College that used to be a fog the mirror test when I graduated are now amongst the toughest schools in the state to get into. The early college program basically is going to allow for parents to cut off 2 years of expenses. So if you're going to UC school and you're living away, you're talking about some serious money. The fact that you have taken college level courses, these are college level courses that are transferable to those things, helps you get into those colleges that you want.
Thank
so
you.
That is the biggest program for me. Sorry.
Okay, no problem.
My passion.
Mr. Zaroyan.
So it's really amazing the opportunity to actually engage students. You know, when I launched this campaign a month ago, I was shocked at the amount of students that reached out when learning about my platform and how engaging and exciting it was for them. Board member Wong mentioned our, early enrollment into community college classes, right? And building on top of that, how we can continue to be innovative and not just offering community college classes, but like I mentioned before, introducing automatic acceptance to reduce the administrative barrier that low-income disenfranchised communities have. Monrovia Unified's largest populations are Latinx socioeconomic disadvantaged students, and finding ways that we can engage them in 2, 4, and a year and vocational schools. And also making sure that they want to go to class, right? So, not only tackling chronic absenteeism through ways of engagement with the family, but making sure that we're engaging them with ways that they can get involved with their curriculum.
Thank you. And Ms. Golar.
Well, my passion as an educator is equity and access. Really meeting the students in terms of what their needs are. And when you say all has to mean all. So very passionate, because not every student will pursue 2-year, 4-year college. Some will go into careers. We need plumbers. We need everyone, right? And so the passion is equity and access so that our students graduate prepared for life, not just this or that, but they're prepared for life. So equity and access, that's my passion.
And Mr. Hammond.
Thank you. It's very hard to limit to one. I'm going to speak about one, and I'm going to go in the same 2 minutes. I love that we have Code to the Future. Code to the Future provides a platform where a student will be able to, with the knowledge that they've gained starting in elementary school all the way through high school, to be able to leave high school and secure a high-paying job. And I love the whole concept. But the thing that I love the most is the thing I loved the most about school when I was in school. I love the arts. I love the music. I'm a band geek. And it's always the soft service that gets cut first. And I want to make sure that I'm sitting on that board fighting to make sure that every kid who goes to school who is involved in the arts has an art pathway for them to enjoy, and it doesn't just get removed.
Thank you. Well, there are so many more questions that we got, but we're getting to the end, unfortunately, or fortunately, of our 2 hours. So I think at this time, we're going to have to go to closing statements, and each person will get a minute, and we're going to do them in reverse order. So we will start with Mr. Zaroyan. Your closing statement, please.
Well, to the teachers, students, and families that are watching, thank you for your perseverance during this time of unprecedented challenges. I'm running for the Monrovia School Board because teachers, students, and families need to feel confident in their school leaders that can address the problems our district had yesterday, challenges we're facing today, and to plan for the future. My slogan for my campaign is community-led solutions to statewide problems. The problems of high rates of absenteeism, low math proficiency scores, low college and career readiness are not unique to Monrovia Unified. Districts across California have faced this issue. However, as Monrovia Unified has continued to increase these inequities over the years, other districts have solved it. We need to solve these statewide problems with community-led solutions that put our students first. I am the best candidate to tackle these challenges and introduce new policies to remain competitive. As a graduate of our schools, I can empathize with the needs of students and families. And as an education policy advocate, I'll push for solutions at our state capitol that put our teachers and staff first locally and statewide. I'll continue to do that as your next school board member. So please vote for Shari Zoran for the Monrovia School Board. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Wong.
Thank you. Once again, I want to thank the league for putting this together. This is a great opportunity for the community to see people who are looking to step up for them. I really don't think that you're going to have a wrong choice because everybody here is looking to give back. But I got to tell you, the thing that concerns us the most, concerns me the most, are the items that we've highlighted about the finances and about our gaps that are getting created because of the distance learning. And because of that, I think that I am the best prepared to be able to address these issues at this point in time. Communication is clearly another large item that we have to tackle, but know that I am always accessible. You can always email me, text me, call me, so I can hear what your concerns are. This is how we improve as a board. This is how we make sure that the problems that are important to you are important to us. If it's an issue for you, it's going to be issues for other people. Thank you very much for your support, and please vote for me in November.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson.
First, thank you to the League of Women Voters and the Monrovia Chamber of Commerce for hosting this forum tonight. We're in a critical time where we must all work together to secure the education of all children in Monrovia, and the parent perspective is key. We must get these decisions right as we move forward to safeguard our children's futures. We need strong leadership, deep commitment, and a current understanding of the daily issues in our district. Please stand with me as I continue to work to ensure that all children in Monrovia are educated, heard, respected, and valued. Please stand with me as I continue to serve, as I have for the last 15 years in Monrovia, to bring people together, to strengthen our community, our schools, and the future of our children. To learn more about me, please visit my Facebook or website at Jennifer Anderson, 4musd.com. Please vote for Jennifer Anderson, mom, educator, and proven school leader. Thank you.
Thank Thank you. Mr. Hammond.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Thank you so much for this evening, the League of Women Voters and the Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to thank everybody who tuned in this night and listened to the forum. The decision on who to place on the Board of Education for the next 4 years is a very important vote. There is certainly going to be significant budget cuts from the state due to COVID-19. These budget cuts will impact every aspect of our school system. I am prepared to meet the demands of these difficult decisions and place the education of our students as the highest priority. I commit to our students and families my guiding principle will always be what is best for our students. It has been a privilege to serve our community for the past 9 years as your representative to the Monrovia Unified School District. I ask for your support on November the 3rd to continue to serve you. Thank you.
And finally, Ms. Golar.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters in the Monrovia Chamber of Commerce. Now is the time to act with a sense of urgency and moral courage, to seize the opportunity to reimagine our schools and to reset priorities so that our school system works for all of our students and not just 24% of them. I'm a candidate who is able to draw upon knowledge, experience, and perspective to make a contribution towards establishing new systems, new approaches where we intentionally promote equity and access so that we dismantle the harmful practices felt by the most vulnerable students, who are 70% of our students in the district. The challenges of our current reality have been many. All children in Monrovia schools deserve a board member who will advocate for our current and future needs. School board members are nonpartisan elected officials who must operate with the lens of inclusiveness, equity, and collaboration. Now is the time.
You've frozen.
New vision, implement a strategic plan to make Monrovia Unified School District great. I ask for your vote this mandate.
Thank you. Thank you. I forgot to mention at the beginning, if you ever freeze, if you just turn off your video, sometimes that'll free up your bandwidth. But anyway, so this is the time for our closing. I want to thank everybody who's been part of this forum. It's been unusual. This is the first time I've done it via Zoom. Hopefully it was satisfactory to the candidates and to the audience. As stated earlier, the League's voter service goal is to promote an informed and involved electorate. So we hope that tonight we have succeeded in helping you to be better informed, but now it's your job. You have to be the involved part. Please participate in the democracy by casting your vote on or before November 3rd. Every voter in California, in LA County, will receive a mail-in ballot. They're being started to be mailed out on October 5th. You can mail your ballot in, you can drop it off at a drop box, or you can go to the polls and vote in person. And if you do mail it, it has to be postmarked by November 3rd. And then it has to arrive at the registrar's office no later than November 20th. So for more information, here's some League of Women Voters websites, places that you can go to find. Is run by people who show up. So thank you again and good night.